Boa tarde and happy Pentecost. I am, as you can tell, not in Lubango anymore. I'm back in Calgary. And so I'm joined by a very special guest who will introduce herself.
My name's Bethany. You may have heard about me. I've been praying for Michael for the whole month he was away, and I'm his girlfriend.
So if you wondered who I was referring to at the end of all of my previous videos, she would be the one that I've been making all those little call-outs to. So now that my month in Angola is over, I thought it would be helpful to do a wrap-up video and talk about what went on in the last month. And Bethany, as somebody who was not there, but who spoke to me every day while I was there, she has both an insider and outsider perspective on it.
Mm-hmm.
So she'll kind of frame the discussion that we'll have.
Great. So we were thinking that we might have a lot of things that you don't know about what Michael was doing there. So we've seen him eating a lot of candy.
This is true. It's not the only reason I go to Angola, but I am known for it.
Got candy, got pop. We also saw the Ishtel Library and the tour of that, and interview with one of his students. So I was like wanting to know a little bit more for everybody. What did you do every day? What was your focus of your activities on your mission trip to Angola?
In terms of the daily work, it was teaching English. So Will was one of those English students, and as he indicated in that video, I first taught Will when I stayed in Lubango for a year. I was there up till last year, and then I resumed training him again this past month. We met every single day, Monday to Friday. Classes were 90 minutes to 2 hours, and over the course of the month I led an ESL Bible study on the Gospel of John. There were about 10 students in total. Most of them were people who I had taught English to last year, but there were also some new faces, people I had never met before.
Wow, so what are some highlights of the what you taught? What kind of things did they learn? Not just English, but also about the Gospel of John. What did they learn?
There are some interesting things that come up when you're doing translation. I could never really anticipate what they might ask about. They did frequently find the language of the translation that we used had a word or two that they'd never heard of before. The Angolans do not normally make the sound th, as in the, or then, or these, or those. And so that one, particularly for Angolans who are still very early in their English education, they struggle with making those noises, especially if they have to do it a number of times. But we would read the gospel aloud, then I would ask the class, now can you explain what we just read? And there were always some sharp students who could summarize what we had just been reading and did an excellent job at that. But as well, when you're talking about translation, there are some things that don't translate from the original Greek into English, but it also didn't translate into the Portuguese. John is the gospel that has that great passage where Jesus asks Peter 3 times, "Do you love me?" And in the original Greek, it uses different verbs for love. But because we just use love in English, some of the meaning from the original text is lost, and you have to read your study notes in order to gain what exactly Jesus is saying in that passage. But it's the same in the Portuguese. They as well just use the same verb for love, and so that was a nice opportunity where I got to actually explain something about the gospel that they hadn't heard about before.
That's great. So it's a school that you're teaching in that has a lot of theological studies. Because last year you just did, when you were there for a year, you just taught English and you didn't do Bible studies. So this was a little different kind of a special month with some former students and some new ones. So that sounds great. It sounds like it's a lot more to know about that. So anybody that knows, you can ask you more questions or you can make a comment here on this video. I was also thinking that people might want to know your SIM sending organization and more about the mission that's going on there continuously.
Yeah, I've alluded at various times to SIM Canada, the organization I belong to, but they are part of SIM International, which sends from countries all over the world. There's SIM UK, SIM Brazil, and so forth. So in Angola, SIM's focus is in education, places like the Ishtel Seminary where I was teaching English, healthcare, and those of you who know my uncle are aware that he's one of those who's involved in the healthcare sector, and in agriculture. And there are a couple of programs in the area I'm in where missionaries are trying to assist in getting the agriculture business a little bit firmer. Angola once had a very strong agricultural industry, but the Civil War messed up the previous robust agriculture economy, and so they're trying to help get it back onto its feet, to help train people who don't understand some of the improvements that happened in agriculture during like the 27 years that it was badly disrupted. And a lot of the focus of SIM in all of these places is to spread the gospel to people who have not heard it before. And that is actually something that we do at Ishtel, even though it isn't something that I did personally. But there are various people groups not too far from Lubango who have not really heard the gospel explained to them in their own language. The focus has previously been on the Portuguese language, which most people in Angola speak. But there are groups of people who are so secluded that it's possible for them to live their entire lives without really knowing or fully understanding Portuguese, because Portuguese is really the language spoken in the cities, not so much in the rural settings. So places like Chincondo, which I visited in one of my videos, that's a new church for the Nyaneka people group. And there's a lot of effort being placed right now on the Nyaneka in particular to reach out to them, to continue creating and improving translations of the Bible in order to explain it in a context that Nyaneka will understand.
Great. So there's a number of missionaries that are there full time that you know, and just in that one town that you visited with SIM. So that's great to hear about their mission and all the different things that they're involved in, that you were able to just go in and help with some of it. So that's really neat. So what are your plans for going back? I know you went for a year, you've been a number of times, and you just went for a month. So what do you think God has for you for that?
Yeah, that's a really interesting question. I get about a month of vacation per year, and I thought it might be nice to go back to Angola 1 month every year to follow up on how things are going, because I also run the web page for CML, the hospital where my uncle works. And I'm involved in various other initiatives with the Ishtel Seminary, such as in their library. And going for a month would be enough time to really maintain the relationships that I have there and be aware of what's going on. Because I find even though I can communicate with people over there very easily now with Zoom calls and whatever else, it's no substitute for actually being there in terms of how quickly you can get up to speed on what the challenges facing people in the community are. It's so much easier to communicate and so much more effective when you're actually on the ground.
Great. So there might be some time next year that you go back.
There might be some time in the next year where
We go.
where two of us might actually go. The two of us are talking about that.
Yeah, so that's all the questions I think I had for you for your mission, unless you had something else you wanted to mention.
No, I think it went very well this last month.
Yeah.
The hardest thing about that month was not being in the same place as Bethany.
Yes.
And I know that was really tough on her, which is why if I go back next year, I don't intend to do that alone.
Yeah.
But I do have one other thing. I'll leave that for a separate video. That will be our bonus content.
Oh, okay.
So once you're done watching this video, go click on the bonus video, okay?
All right, love you, babe.
And I love you. Ciao.